Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for joining ARC's weekly fireside chat. Today we will continue highlighting more of our amazing women to continue our celebration of Women's History Month, which is March. Women's History Month. By the way, next week is my birthday, and I want to celebrate my mom, who's an amazing woman that raised 4 children by herself. Incredible. It's my pleasure to introduce Rachel Chung, ARC's Associate Director of Development, who will be our guest host for today's show. Rachel, I'm handing it over to you. Take it away.
Thanks so much, Sam, and happy early birthday. Really appreciate the honor of hosting today's show, especially with some of my esteemed colleagues, and in this virtual environment when it's really hard to connect with each other, especially amongst women staff. So really appreciate the space and time to be able to do this and highlight some of the women that are both behind the scenes and on the front lines of ARC's work. So just a quick bit about me. If you've never seen my face before, I'm Rachel Chung. I'm the Associate Director of ARC. Been with ARC for about 2.5 years now, and it's really just been my pleasure to be able to support the work of my colleagues here on the screen with me and of all of our different departments. If you're not familiar with what development does in the nonprofit sector, we are the fundraisers that help underwrite and support all of our programs and the work that we do. So that spans from grant writing and contract management to donor relations and events, and working closely with the communications team and putting on engagement opportunities like this fireside chat show. So really appreciate the opportunity to be able to pop on here today. And next, I'd love to introduce my colleague, Lili Herrera, who is ARC's Programs Director. So Lili, if you could introduce yourself, tell us how you're doing this lovely Friday and what you do at ARC.
Hi, hello. Hello, everyone. My name is Lili Herrera. I am the Programs Director for Member Services. I am doing great. It's payday, so that even adds more to my joy today. So definitely looking forward to the weekend and super happy and grateful to be part of this panel today.
Thanks, Lili. And I'd like to introduce Sophia, who is ARC's youth advocate, a community organizing intern, as well as an Impact Justice California Justice Leader. Sophia, how are you doing today? And if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about your role at ARC.
Hi, everyone. I'm doing great today. Thank you for having me here. Well, I would like to say that I use my voice and experience to make impactful changes, doing work with ARC. And all that we do and coming together. So, yeah.
Great. And it's actually kind of funny, Sophia, I know we're technically colleagues and on staff together, but because of, not being in the office for the last year, we've never really been able to meet in person or really chat. So I really appreciate this opportunity just to learn a little bit more about you and also Lili. So maybe we could start there. Sophia, maybe if you wouldn't mind sharing your story about how you got into reentry and criminal justice reform, how you became your kind of multi-hyphenate title with ARC, like what brought you here?
So I am system impacted. I was incarcerated at a young age as a juvenile going into adulthood. I learned about ARC while I was still inside. I met Scott Budnick and Sam Lewis. I wanted to learn more about ARC, and I continued communicating with them, learned about the work that I could do, all the resources that they offered. And upon coming home, I reached out to my policy supervisor, Kent Mendoza, and I asked if I would be able to work with them, use my voice, learn all that I could learn. And that's how I got involved in everything. Recently, I had learned about California Justice Leaders, and I was, able to get the opportunity to do that kind of work as well. So.
And how long have you been home now?
I think it's going on 8 months. I came home in August of 2020, so not too long.
Well, welcome home. I'm so impressed by this list of what you're already working on in just 8 months. I would love to hear a little bit more about what projects you're actually working on, especially as a community organizing intern. And you said you're working on Kent's kind of like local organizing team. What are the most exciting projects that you're working on right now?
So right now we're focusing on reinvesting in youth and what it is that they really need, like rehabilitative services. We talk to board of supervisors to make impactful changes because, they're the ones that are able to make those changes. So we use our voice, we meet, we discuss. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. And Lili, I would love to hear the same thing. How did you get into this work? I feel like you've had a really interesting journey through different ARC departments that makes you kind of like uniquely positioned to talk about all sorts of aspects of our work, from housing to programs. So I'd love to hear about your journey to programs director.
Sure. It's interestingly enough, my background is working with victims of violence. I have been in the, part of the nonprofit sector for close to 25 years now. And so, working closely with, survivors of crime, I spend most of my, my young life working as, just in different roles, from advocating to community organizing to project management, eventually overseeing a division within an organization that had been around for over 40 years. The way that I came to this work, oddly enough, is, you just never know, what lies ahead. I knew a lot about working with survivors of crime, and really, not really looking at the bigger picture of the other side of, folks who are incarcerated, folks who, were part of these part of the experience of survivors. Oddly enough, my son actually was arrested and was looking at 25 years at 17. He was 17 years old. Eventually, he was convicted and was sentenced to 4 years, but he took a plea deal, and he took 2 strikes. So at the age of 18, he went off to prison, but he's a 2-striker, and so that opened my eyes, to really invest in really looking into getting more information around, how could this possibly happen, to 18-year-olds. So really looking at ways of understanding, but also, to be honest with you, to be accepted now that, my son had, hurt other people, and he was now facing, what he did and, the consequences of that. But also I looked at it from a different perspective, also from, from families who have loved ones who are incarcerated. At least for me personally, I felt that I was doing time with my kid because literally my life stopped. He's my oldest, and so I never, again, seriously, I never thought that this would ever happen to us, to me. But knowing the pain of a mother, of having a child being incarcerated, at 18, and looking at what his future may look like, that really, really opened me up to really invest now and look at a different direction and getting more involved and finding solutions and justice reform, and really looking at how do we best provide services to folks who are coming home from incarceration. And also, I don't hear a lot of talk around families who have loved ones inside. And so there's just a lot of things that really attracted me to this work. And I've been with ARC now going on 4 years. I came in as a program coordinator for our housing program, which really, again, working directly with men and women coming home, especially men and women coming home after 25 years, 30 years, 40 years, and really looking at the services that they need and how important it is for us to really come up with a plan specifically to people's needs. We got to remember that we are all experts of our own experiences, and therefore we have to take that into consideration when we work with folks, and not trying to create something that is not going to work for them. So it's extremely important that we that we really pay attention to the quality of services, but really to match and be the best support system, but also look at the best possible outcomes for folks.
I really appreciate you sharing that story about your son, and I feel like that experience is so central to ARC's approach to really elevating lived experience in folks who have been impacted by the system. Just as a fact, I think about 74% of our full-time staff right now are formerly incarcerated. So it's really amazing to see that you're leading this department now. And I would love to maybe hear more about how both your experience and your long experience in the sector in anti-violence work has impacted your goals and your vision for the programs department right now. Like, what are you most excited for to work on, and like, where do you see us heading in the future now that you're at the helm?
I couldn't really hear. It's going in and out. Sorry. So can you repeat that?
I apologize. It must have been on mute. That was a total Zoom error. But Lili, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more now that you, if it wasn't clear before, thank you so much for sharing about your son and that experience. I think that's like very central to everything that ARC does, right? It's about 74% of our staff are formerly incarcerated, and that's the heart of our approach, is elevating people with lived experience. So I'd love to hear more about how your personal and professional experience, your years of working in anti-violence work, has impacted your goals now that you're at the helm of the programs department. Like, where are we headed next? What are you most excited for?
Well, super excited that we're slowly coming out of this nightmare, this pandemic. It's been a long road. I know that when I was in housing, when the shutdown took place, and there was a lot of a fear around what that was going to look like. Folks felt like they were feeling like they were going to be, per se, kept away, like their freedom was being taken away again because of the restrictions and whatnot. So I think that moving in this direction now, and me being in this role, I'm really looking forward to re-engaging folks back into the services and the programming and the referrals that we had to put on hold because of the pandemic, and really begin to expand and look at other resources that really are impacting right now folks. One of the things that I hope to continue to grow in the department is our referral and our resources. I know that permanent housing is huge right now in securing permanent housing for folks. Also, mental health, wellness is one of the things that we're looking at. A lot of, people have been inside their homes, and there's a lot of depression and mental health issues that have come up for folks. So really looking at expanding our resources and our services is something that I am looking forward to. And again, identifying the specific needs to specific, for people's specific needs. So I'm really hoping that we continue to grow, but also take into consideration the specific needs of members, and create and hear their voices. And I think it's extremely important that we always include, the folks that we are serving, that we hear their voices and create programs around what we are listening and paying attention to that.
To follow up that point that you brought up about unique experiences, I feel like women have a very unique experience, both in the system, experiencing various levels of incarceration and upon reentry. And on top of that, I think women that work in the criminal justice reform and reentry space also have very unique experiences and perspectives and strengths to bring to the table. So Sophia, I'd love to pass it back to you and wonder if you can share some insight on the unique challenges that women and young women face moving through the justice system, and then when you come home.
For me, it was a very, traumatizing, scary experience because I went in when I was so young. It was all new to me. I had no idea what was going on in anything. And, being a young girl in that situation, it's different. As women, we're more emotional. We take things differently. So it was a long journey. It was a long fight. But upon coming home and being able to do this work, I feel like it's a healing process, and being able to work with people that relate and understand like what I've been through, and we're able to share our stories and experience to move people and change lives or change laws, and we do this thing all together that makes this huge impact. It makes what we went through different. So instead of it just being something that, you know, we hold on to in a negative way, we turned it around. So we used our traumatic and bad experiences to make the experience for other people better, so that they won't have to suffer through the same things we went through. We're just trying, I guess I would say, you know how it says, be the change you wish to see in the world. So I would say it starts with us, because we're the ones that dealt with it. We know what people are going through, and we know what to say to make that impact and that change. Um, so yeah, and also coming home, it's different than what you imagine it would be. It's nothing like what you imagine when you're in there. All you do is think about coming home, what you're gonna do the first day, the first few hours, and then it kind of hits you like a ton of bricks. So it's really unexpected, but it's also a great experience, and it's a journey that strengthens you, I would say. And like I said, just working with the people that I work with and being able to associate with those that understand makes it, you know, all the worthwhile.
I could also imagine coming home during a pandemic was like not the way that you imagined your homecoming to ever be, and it's all the more challenging, especially the barriers to just connecting with people. And it sounds like you've jumped in headfirst into this policy work, and I echo Juan in the comments. We're really proud of you and just really excited to see where you're going. What are your goals, like short term, now that you're 8 months back home, and then also what's next? Like, is policy the field that you want to stay in?
So my current goals right now are finishing school and transferring to a university. I want to study psychology and one day have my own private practice where I can focus helping troubled youth and young adults. But I also want to intertwine that work with the work that I already do. So, you know, people that may have been system impacted or, you know, justice involved, you know, I want to be able to work with them and help them and still continue to do this work, because we all have a unique experience, a unique story. Everyone's voice is different. So what may impact someone one way could impact another a different way. So I want to keep doing this work because I feel like it's a perfect fit for me based on everything that I went through. And I want to encourage other people to get involved in this line of work as well. I think it makes the biggest difference in the world to be able to use our voice to change laws and change lives. So yeah, I feel like this is something that I will want to do for a very long time.
Great. I mean, I'm really excited to see where you're headed next at ARC and afterwards. And Lili, I'd like to pass it back to you. Like you mentioned the unique needs of members, and I would love to hear more specifically about women. How do we need to serve women better and be more gender responsive? And what are we doing to approach that?
You know, it's interesting because when I came to housing, I realized that our housing programs was specific for males, and I questioned and I kind of harassed John, our director, about you know, housing for women, and so finally we all decided that we would have you know, we would assign you know, specific number of beds for women who were coming home as well. So I definitely saw the need for housing for women specifically within our program. As you know, we see the need. We see an increase of the need for housing in other programs. I am really hoping that we really begin to explore more gender-specific programming that that is, you know, that addresses women's needs. They're very different from the type of program delivery that we have right now. It's more tailored for men. And we know, as Sophia mentioned, the needs of women are different. And we have to really, I hope that in the near future, we begin to grow not only our staff, female staff, but also the resources and the programming and services that we have for specific for women. I hope that someday we see more women in leadership, not only within ARC, but in this movement. And so, we have young women like Sophia and others who are really are beginning to represent and have their voices be heard, as you mentioned. So I think that it's really important for us as an agency, as a movement, to really begin to open these discussions, not only during this month. It should be ongoing conversations all the time. And I think that women should always be part of the conversation, and they should be part of these panels and discussions and decision making. So I'm hoping that in the near future, we continue to bring the voices to the table, but also raise our voices and come together and be part of the decision making.
Yeah, I hear you touching on a really important point too, which is the need for more women representation in decision making and in criminal justice reform more generally. I'm wondering if you have any suggestions or feedback about how do we do that? I think the justice space is really historically a male-dominated industry, both the justice system, but also on the reform and systems change side, on the nonprofit and CBO side, because of the difference in population size. But I think, like you pointed out, more responsive and more individualized care is definitely necessary. So how do we go about like mobilizing and reaching out and elevating women to positions of leadership in our space?
Again, I think that women should always be part of the conversation. I think that from women just in general, including young women with lived experiences who can speak on their experiences and what they are doing, to be part of the movement. I think that sometimes there's one or two women at the table, but I think that we have to really look at what our role is and really begin to speak more on our personal experiences, whether we are system impacted or we are, we're system impacted in some way, whether, time was served, or, mothers who are, or women who are supporting family members inside of when people are doing their time. I think that we should really look at all aspects of how this type of experience impacts people, especially specifically women. I know for me, it was really eye-opening when I would go visit my son, and especially when he was here in detention. It was really amazing for me to see the lines and lines of women who were waiting to see their loved one. So I think that bringing women to the table is extremely important, to just share what their experience has been, and again, the way that they have been impacted.
Absolutely. I can think of one really good example of women coming into power, into leadership roles, and that's Sophia, your role with California Justice Leaders. Could you tell us a little bit more about what California Justice Leaders is more broadly, and what you do with as a leader?
So I recently started working with California Justice Leaders, and I am now able to help other system impacted individuals with their reentry. So, assist them with resources, talking to them, finding out what it is that they need, where I can help them. So basically, I'm giving back to those, in all areas of what I needed at one point. So, I mean, it's a great position to be in, being that I'm allowed to do that. And, people are trusting me that I can help others. So I'm still learning a lot about California Justice Leaders. I just recently started a few weeks ago, but so far I'm loving what it is that they're teaching us and allowing us to do. As time goes on, I will work with system impacted people, adults and youth. So we'll just see how that goes, but I have a really good feeling about it.
Great. And you mentioned that it was something that you needed when you were coming home. I'm wondering if you can expand upon that. Like, what was there something that was really pivotal in making your transition home really successful? Like, is there something that gives you strength and inspiration, or is there something that was lacking, like that could have made the transition better for you?
So one of the things that I felt I needed throughout my whole incarceration was, someone to talk to about things that I was struggling with or dealing with, some form of a mentor, someone that I can go to and trust with things that I was struggling with, or if there was questions that I needed answered that I didn't understand. And upon coming home, one of the things that I feared and struggled with was, where was I going to go home to? Things in my family were really chaotic. So it felt like it would stress them more or be a burden. There's not a lot of housing for women. And if you're 24, 25 and you're coming home, there's usually age outs in a lot of the housing that they do offer. So you have to be between the ages of 18 to 23. So there was a real big concern on where I would go home to, and like how I would be able to maintain and do well. So just connecting with ARC was one of the good things, because I met with Scott, I met with Sam, and then they connected me with Donnie, and I was able to have a great conversation with him and learn more about the program. I met with Darlene when ARC was able to still go inside and, talk to the youth before the pandemic hit very hard. So I was able to be a part of that process and learn more about the program and what it offered. And it was something that I felt that I really needed, and I was able to receive. So ARC helped me a lot. So I felt that in a way they were the mentor that I always needed, because they offered everything that I had needed and wanted at some point. So I didn't want to just go home and everything be crazy. I wanted some form of structure, someone to understand what it is that I may have went through or would be going through upon coming home. Being a woman in that position. So it just seemed like a perfect fit. And then aside from, going into their housing and using their resources, being able to work with them, everything just came together. So.
That's really an amazing story arc. And I'm, excited to see like what other leadership positions you'll take in ARC. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Impact Justice, who's been a really great partner of ARC as well. And they operate the California Justice Leaders Program in partnership with AmeriCorps, and sponsor and provide programming for the California Justice leaders like Sophia. So really appreciate that partnership and other coalition partners. I also want to take a pause to mention, if you are in the audience, wherever you're watching, if you want to drop any questions or comments in the chat, we will see them pop up and can get to them towards the end of the show. And now I just want to pivot a little bit. I know this has been a difficult week, I think, in the news. It's felt really traumatic. We've had the stories of Sarah Everard. We've had this mass shooting with 8 people killed in Atlanta. And I think it's particularly hard on women, especially when we're exposed to stories of such violence and, have to deal with that fear in our personal experiences. So Lili, I know you've worked in anti-violence work, you mentioned, or in anti-violence contexts throughout your career. Could you tell us a little bit more about why an anti-violence framework is really important for healing for our communities and why it's really relevant right now? I think you're on mute.
Sorry. I think that we really have to recognize that we have a history of violence against women. And, it's important to really acknowledge that, 1 in 3 women and girls are raped. And so we have to really look at the statistics of, the level of violence that women experience and how that shapes their lives. A lot of times working in the field of working with victims of crime, I think that, I saw the impact at a really young age and how that shapes decision making, and that shapes a lot of the outcomes or women's lives. So it is really important for us to really acknowledge that, again, the needs of women are different, maybe a little bit different than men. I've seen a lot of folks who have been sexually abused. Sexual abuse is huge, and it's something that has unfortunately impacted so many young women and older women as well. And so we really have to take a look at, how do we begin to heal from that. It's extremely important that we acknowledge that's sometimes a huge part of people's lives, and it's unpacked trauma. It's something that a lot of times people have a hard time acknowledging that actually was, part of their lives, and that's something that happened. So coming to ARC, I have definitely seen so many folks who have experienced that type of trauma or any type of violence that happened to them, whether they were children or sometime in their life, and how that impacted them. And so really looking at how do we work around that? How do we provide folks with a safe space for them to be able to acknowledge, the violence that happened to them. And so I think that exploring more, and it's not just about therapy, it's more of a healing process and what that looks like for folks. But I think that we really have to really take a step back and really look at people's own personal experiences, but also looking at what are some of those ways that we begin to identify. I think right now that we have a lot of resources, policy, employment, but again, coming from like housing, how do we provide support groups, additional resources to really begin to explore, first of all, people's experiences, but also, again, help them along their healing process. And again, I have to always reiterate the importance of acknowledging that, we're all, experts over our own experiences. And so that may look different for folks. And again, bringing people into these conversations is extremely important.
I agree. And you mentioned that safety is paramount, and then also just providing safe and healing spaces is also really important for successful reentry and just reintegration and feeling safe at home. So Sophia, I was wondering, I feel like, I definitely acknowledge how brave you are and what a toll it takes on you probably to share your story constantly on this space, and also in the line of work you've chosen. I think it takes a lot of like mental fortitude to be able to do that, and a lot of self-reflection, and like I'm just truly impressed and think that you're very brave for doing that. So I'm wondering, how do you see like safety and like a trauma-informed approach, especially to storytelling? That how do you take care of yourself and create spaces that allow you to do that?
Well, it is a lot telling my story, but I feel like in using my experience and my story to help others, there's strength in that. So I guess I use that to strengthen me and keep me going, and allowing it to strengthen others, like knowing the impact and change that we'll have on other people. It means a lot. So initially I was afraid of telling my story, but then I realized, all that it can do just by sharing something that I went through and allowing others to know that they're not alone. So that's a big thing.
Great. And to toss it back to you, Lili, you mentioned we have all sorts of different programs, including like therapeutic services. And I also wanted to bring up our women's and non-binary program, which is kind of its own mini department within programs that's been, I believe we launched it about 1.5 years ago. So it's kind of a new initiative, and we do inside and in-reach into 2 women's facilities. And so Lili, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the women's and non-binary department. And we also got some questions from the audience about services specifically for women in the San Diego area. So, we're a statewide organization. So if you could talk a little bit about what we do on a state level, and then about the women's department.
Sorry, I keep forgetting I'm turning off my mic. The women's department is run by Norma Kumpian, who was actually the host last week during our fire chat. You can reach out to her for more specific information regarding the specific programming that goes on. But as you mentioned, there is in-reach programming that happens inside the women's facilities. And so you can definitely I honestly, I don't have the specifics, and I don't want to like ruin that or give misinformation. So definitely we can reach out to Norma, and we can actually put her email on the chat box as well. What was the other question? I'm sorry, Rachel.
That was mostly it, but just more broadly, like how does the women's and non-binary program department kind of function within programs, and what are the kinds of services that you can connect with in that program?
Yeah, we will be having a newsletter coming out soon. And again, we could reach out to Norma for more specific services.
Great, thank you. And I think we're also getting a few questions about services specifically for LGBTQIA folks, Women X, and gender nonconforming individuals, and that also falls under our Women X and non-binary services department. So I would also suggest reaching out to Norma. I think we can drop that into the chat box for contact information. And now, Lili, I also want to ask you the same question that I asked Sophia. Like, how do you create safe spaces, both at ARC and for our staff and for our members, but also for yourself? Like, how do you take care of yourself?
I like to, honestly, I started hiking not too long ago. A friend of mine actually pushed me really hard to really just kind of do something for myself. And so I've taken up hiking. I really enjoy it. But, I'm not very like active or like, I don't, working out's not my thing, but I really definitely enjoy hiking and really just getting out there. And so self-care is definitely important, but oftentimes we forget to do that for ourselves. We are, for me, specifically, it's I might sound weird, but I get a joy out of like going to work. This pandemic, going into this position right now has kind of working from home. It's really been a challenging transition to work from home because I was, from in housing, we didn't stop anything. We pretty much were running as as usual. And so I was going to work every day. And now that the last 3 weeks have been really challenging for me to stay home. But definitely, it brings me a lot of joy to like really connect with people. And so that's part of my self-care. Honestly, it's just really checking in on people.
And how about more generally at ARC? Like, how are there ways that we can better support our staff and our members to, I think, self-care is so important right now, and mental health has been on everybody's mind and in conversations. It's really at the forefront of, I think, public conversations right now. What are ways that ARC can build support for our staff, especially our women staff, and then also our members at this time in regards to like mental health in COVID?
Yeah, I think it's really important right now since we have to, we can gather in person. I think it's extremely important for us to check in on folks, check in on our staff, how they're doing. I think that it's all of our staff who has been working from home for all this time has done an amazing job at checking in on our members, whether it's on a weekly basis. We respond, we're, amazing and responding to crisis, immediate needs. I think that, again, this type of setting where we bring together women to talk about our experiences, their unique experiences. And so I think that it's important to give these spaces, specifically now. Even sometimes, a couple of us have gone together after work over Zoom and just had a glass of wine and just kind of chit chat, or vent or whatever, gossip, so I think that the wellness check-ins that we have been doing with our members has been critical in staying connected, but also continue to offer the resources. And again, our mental health department, our mental health wellness department has been amazing at responding to the needs of folks who really need that one-on-one. And so I think it's critical that we check in on each other and that we provide the support that both members and staff need.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I know my team and I have worked really hard to stay connected and not, I mean, Zoom life, as I'm sure everybody watching and on here knows, it's really difficult to find that work-life balance, and it takes a toll in ways that are really unexpected. And Sophia, I know you came home while you joined the team while we were virtual, which is really just a different work environment for everybody. And I feel like I'm still learning how to navigate this and work well. And it's been over a year. So what is it like working on the policy team where you all are connected virtually? And I wonder how that works, because policy is so relationship based and it's about connecting and speaking. And how do you guys operate?
I think it's because of how we communicate. So we connect in the space and outside of the space. There's like constant discussions, constant communication. So me coming home and jumping into ARC, actually ARC is my first official job. So I had never been in like an office setting, anything like that. So I don't want to say it was difficult. It wasn't, but I do know that when we are all able to go back to the office, it'll be different than what I'm used to, because this is all I know for now. There are a few times when we've been able to go to the office and meet, but obviously there's social distancing and there's, precautions because of COVID. But once everything opens back up, it'll be a different experience, for me at least, because I haven't had that as the other people on my team have. But I still think that we do really well in communicating, and, we know what it is that we need to do. So, yeah.
That's great. And for anybody watching that has been to the ARC office, you know that it's such a living hub for all of our staff and members. It's really open format. There's groups. You are always having like building relationships, building connections, like getting to know each other. And that's, I think that for myself, like that's something that keeps me going and makes me feel fulfilled, was that kind of connection and really being able to be a part of a community. And so it is really difficult, and I'm really excited to go back, and that we have been able to pivot so nimbly over the last year and are continuing to innovate new ways to connect with each other. But I'm definitely excited to be able to see people in person, although there's perks of working at home, I will say. So now I because it's Women's History Month, I also want to hear a little bit about women that have inspired both of you, people in your life, or even figures more broadly, folks that you look up to. So I'd love to hear somebody that's inspired, or hear about somebody that's inspired you. And maybe Lili, we can start with you.
Sure, no problem. I did say I came into the nonprofit sector world at the age of 23, and I was a single mom. I was a teen mom, and I was rough around the edges. I'm not gonna, lie. So she, my first supervisor, first woman that gave me a break to come in and work with high-risk youth. She really was somebody that took me under her wing and really mentored me. Leah Aldridge, forever grateful to her. She is still an inspiration, and she taught me the biggest lesson was to, be quiet, take it all in, and learn from the folks who have been, there before you. And so that was one of the biggest lessons for me, to just, pay attention to folks who had been doing this work for, a long time, and really absorb as much as I possibly could and put it into practice, in my own way. And so, I went through a lot of trainings, and she was instrumental in looking out for me in my professional growth. And so she's somebody definitely that made a huge impact on me. And again, all the women and pioneers of work, specifically addressing, violence against women, are definitely women who will forever, I will forever be grateful to. So it's not just one woman, it has been several women, and I have a group of strong women who have supported me through the ups and downs, through the dark times of my son's incarceration, and so it's not just one woman; it's women, and I continue to meet women every day. Having come to this space now, the women at ARC, I have nothing but respect for all of the women, what we're doing, how we lift this work, and how we continue to push through and make sure that we continue to support our younger sisters coming home. I am just super impressed with Sophia. She came to Bromont, and I got to see a little bit of her begin to kind of spread her wings, and so I am super, super impressed and just excited to see what's next for you, Sophia. So continue to kick ass and continue to do what you're doing, because what you're doing, you're amazing, and I hope that we continue to support other women. And so again, it's not just one woman. Looking up to Sophia, learning even the way she expressed herself, it's amazing. So yeah, it's just not one woman, it's many women, and yeah. So I'm hoping that we continue to support each other and continue to encourage each other for us to push and stay and be part of this conversation and be part of the decision making that I mentioned earlier.
I echo that, Lily. I'm constantly inspired by the women that I get to work with. Even having this conversation with both of you today, I think it's just a really healing space to be able to connect with other women and talk about our experiences that are both, the same in some regards and very different in others, and how we can all support one another. So, Sophia, I'd love to hand it off to you. Can you tell us about some women that have inspired you?
The number one woman that will always inspire me is my mom. She will always be my answer when it comes to that question. She's the strongest person that I know, despite everything that she's been through. A lot of people that have hurt her, just the experiences that she's had or have come across. She's remained strong. She's remained like the nicest person that I've ever known. She always sees the good in people. She constantly gives people the benefit of the doubt. She will have nothing and give people everything. So I think she set a good example of strength in me. So yeah, she will always be the number one woman that I look up to. And when it comes to other women, I would say every woman that has shared a similar experience, or one that have been even more traumatizing than mine, and stayed strong through that, and have been unbreakable. They share their story to encourage others. They share their strength. I just think that's very empowering, and that's always something to look up to.
I love that. It's really beautiful. Last question before we close out is, if you had a message that you could tell women inside, or even our women members, what is your message? What would you like to say? And Sophia, we can start with you.
I would say, allow things to make you better, not bitter. Stay strong. Remember, there's always light at the end of the tunnel, and it's up to you to decide how you want to feel each day, and the steps that you want to keep pursuing to make you a better person. I would say, keep fighting on. You'll make it to where you want to make it.
Thanks, Sophia. Lili?
Definitely continue to push. We see you, we hear you. Never ever forget how strong we are as women. The possibilities are endless, and so I hope never to don't give up. We're here, we're out here. We continue to look at needs, and again, we'll continue to push for gender-specific programming, and definitely, again, don't give up, and definitely we see you, and I hope to meet you very soon.
Thank you both. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. I'm truly inspired just to hear both of your stories and to hear about what you're working on next. definitely rooting for you and following your success, and I'm here to support however I can. And as development, I do have to shout out all of our allies and champions and supporters that also make our work possible, that make engagement events like this fireside chat possible. It really is a community effort, and we appreciate everybody who is in our corner, who is supporting ARC and helping us grow and really elevate and mobilize and strengthen and build power in our community. So really appreciate it, and would love to give each of you just a quick closeout if you would like to share a few words, either just about to close out Women's History Month and this chat today. So Lili, is there any last words you'd like to share with us?
Just extremely, grateful to be able to take part of this conversation, and super proud that, we come together in these spaces. But definitely, I love how we continue to bring in more women into these spaces, and to see young women like Sophia and others come into these spaces is extremely exciting, and definitely look forward to the future. But I do definitely want to give you a shout out, Rachel. You're behind the scenes. Your intro was to, introduce yourself a little bit, say more a little bit about development, but I definitely see the hard work that you and your team do every day. So I definitely want to give a shout out to you, and definitely, always being the voice of what we need. And so big shout out to you too. So, I definitely want to acknowledge and definitely look up to you. And definitely you have amazing ideas that you bring to the table. So want to definitely acknowledge you as well.
Thanks so much, Lili. I really appreciate that.
Of course.
And Sophia, I'd love to give you the floor to give our closing words today.
I just want to say thank you for allowing me to come on here and share my story and experience. It was very, empowering and encouraging. Also hearing what Lili had to say. I feel women always have a lot to say, and we can make major changes, and we just got to keep working through whatever it is that we're facing. And also thank everyone for, watching and being part of it, and being there for ARC. That always means a lot. So thanks.
And thank you both. I've really, really enjoyed this time with you, and I look forward to the day that we can actually see each other in person in the office. And I want to thank everybody in the audience for joining us from home. I hope you've been enjoying this series with us. I think these are really important conversations, and it's really amazing to have this space to share a little bit of the work that we're doing and what's coming up. So turning it back over to you, Sam.
Thank you all so much. What an amazing group. Speechless. Thank you. Thank you for being part of ARC. We are lucky and blessed to have you as part of the team. Thank you for hosting today, Rachel. Amazing. Next week, we'll be addressing violence against our AAPI community members. This is something that's important to us, and I want it to be really, really clear for everyone to know. We stand with our AAPI community members, both here in California and across the nation. Violence is not acceptable against any group, period. It's not to be questioned. This is not something, if you see it, call it out. Do not stand idly by. We must protect one another and make sure that we're all safe. So next week, that's what we'll be talking about. Looking forward to having this conversation with some of our members, staff, and hopefully a couple of elected officials. Until then, everyone take care, God bless, and stay safe.